Back home now, in our managed isolation hotels are too posh, and returnees should not be treated like hotel guests with luxuries like free menu choices and dry cleaning. That's the verdict from New Zealand woman Toni Foster, who has returned to the country to take up a job and has spent the past 11 days in isolation at Ellerslie's Novotel hotel. Toni told me she had expected to return to isolation accommodation similar to the container village after the Christchurch earthquakes, not a free 4 or 5-star hotel, which she says some returnees are treating as a holiday. She told me returnees should not be treated like hotel guests because they're not paying a cent to be there.
To me, the whole thing feels like an experiment. They're very, very soft, the way they're managing the people. I expected a completely different experience. There wasn't much you could get online, so you couldn't really mentally prepare. So I sort of prepared for like a boot camp, karate camp type situation where it would be hard. There would be limited luxuries. It would be really managed. I expected it to be at that, me struggling with the whole, like it's just so hard. I honestly I didn't realise it would be like a holiday.
So how posh is isolation, Toni? How posh is it?
Well, it's too posh. People are like, I'll give you an example. Last night there was a gentleman, there's a line that you're not allowed, we've all known since March that all offices, anywhere there's a line, you're not meant to lean on counters. So that big fat American guy was leaning on the counter, and the receptionist, because the receptionists are treating the guests like we're hotel guests, they're not standing up to these people. So I said to him, excuse me, there's a line. You're not meant to be leaning on the counter. Everyone knows that. That's why there's a line there. And he goes, oh. I said, so you need to step back and respect the lady's space. And she didn't know how to manage him. And then later on, you're not allowed in the restaurant area. And later on, I was just going up to the lift, and he was in the restaurant area asking for a large scotch glass. And I'm like, I said to him, you're not meant to be in there. This is our food. So they're not. It's really weird. We're getting treated really well and really softly, which is fine if you're a paying guest. But to me, if you're in a quarantine stroke managed isolation, it needs to be. We're not hotel guests. We are, you know what I mean. It's like it's weird.
So
the thing.
So are some people taking the mickey? I mean, just talk me through. So,
yes,
for example, the food options and things.
Oh my God! When you first arrive, it's a bit of a bungle getting off the plane and everything, but I thought it was run really well considering how many people are returning. And it takes about 2 hours from the time your bus pulls up. They let 15 off each bus, and there's only 15 on our bus, so there was 3 buses. And then you line up, and it's quite good. Everyone does the social distancing. Again, there's a lack of communication. You don't know what to expect. You're told to go in and go left, which is fine. So then there's a whole lot of Ministry of Health people sitting around, and then they throw a menu at you and say, pick your meals for the next 7 days. So I'm like, and there's all these choices, and I'm like, okay, so I've picked what I thought would be great. And then the next morning, an abundance of food arrived, like yogurt, fruit, waffles that I didn't order, croissants that I didn't order, cereal I only ordered toast with 1 fruit. And there's a complete and utter waste amongst everybody, and everybody's talking about it. And I'm witnessing how people are just taking the staff and taking the system for advantage, taking advantage of it and complaining about the meals.
Is there a degree of extravagance being shown among the guests, Toni?
I do amongst the guests. I think there is an expectation of how they should be treated, and definitely a degree of extravagance, most definitely, which I was unprepared for. I thought we'd be doing hard time.
You say that you expected it to be tougher. By that, do you mean more regimented and people checking up on you?
Well, I expected them to be like, okay, I'm on the 5th floor. Only the 5th floor can go and exercise between 10 and 11. I didn't think it would be a free-for-all that you could go out and mix with everybody, because you've got people arriving most days. So basically, when the people arrive, from day 3, they've had their COVID test. Now, once they've had that COVID test, we still don't know whether they're negative or positive. They're allowed to mix we're all allowed to mix together. And there's people smoking and out in the smoking area, that's fine. But it's like, I expected it to be, there's no way we're all going to mix together. There's been a lot of talk amongst the travellers that everyone's surprised how lax it is.
So, Toni, if you reckon it's too posh there and too extravagant, where do you think that returnees should be put up instead?
Well, I don't have all the answers, but I lived through the Christchurch earthquake and saw pretty quickly how they knocked up a thing called the container thing. There was a Quake City, or whatever. No, it was a container city. I don't know I can't remember what they called it. It's been away a while. And I would have thought the Ministry of Health, I think they've been caught with their pants down. No one could have predicted COVID-19 the way it has happened, but I would have thought the Ministry of Health would have had in their file somewhere a plan for this type of outbreak. They should have had a facility that perhaps, make a container city using the military cabins. I don't know. I just think staying in 4-star hotels and the guests treating the staff like it's a luxury and complaining about meals and getting room service and we get free dry cleaning and it's extravagant. And I just think who's paying for it, basically.
What do you reckon the value of your stay has been there, Toni? So at the end of it, you would have been there 2 weeks?
I worked it out, and I was being realistic with the dry cleaning, the meals, the food. I worked out about $4,500.
Dry cleaning? So you get freebies with the dry cleaning?
You get two vouchers of $25 each, up to 10 items. So you get 2 bags of free dry cleaning. Now, I've probably had 8 garments done, so I'm trying to use the same set of exercise clothes, and I've been washing them in the basin. But what gets me, how we all know how to protect ourselves from COVID, washing our hands, cleaning the surfaces. I expected in the rooms, instead of being so luxurious with the meals, the choices, the room service, people are allowed to ring up and order coffees, and that's all very well and good, but it's staff. So I think they should have alcohol wipes in the rooms. We got nothing to wipe our surfaces down, yet it tells us to clean our surfaces regularly. I asked for some cleaning products a few days ago when housekeeping rung. They gave me 1 sachet of this detergent. And
but you can get a cappuccino if you want one.
Yeah, it's bullshit. And there's a man last night walking, an American guy, as I said, walking around in the area where he's not, but no one told him off. I expect it to be harsh, like, hey, mate, get out. So I said to him, get out. And he sort of gave me an abuse, and I'm like, we're not guests. We're here under quarantine types, managed isolation. It's a holiday, basically. People, like a lady, I was watching a married family yesterday, and the lady didn't want to wear a mask. And the minute the Navy person went up and said, hey, excuse me, you've got to wear a mask. Last few days, that's obviously been a rule that's changed. And she goes, I can't. I don't want to breathe in my own ear. And I just thought, Jesus Christ. So a compromise was she wore it over her mouth and she left her nose out. So why wasn't she told, no mask, no walk? It's stupid. It's way too soft, way too luxurious, and I'd like to know who's footing the bill.
Well, everybody is. The taxpayers are. So first thing, Toni, just very briefly, would you be prepared to make a contribution to isolation costs, and do you think people should be charged in part?
I worked out what I could afford. I worked out that I would throw in, not much, but $500 towards the food, but I'd be prepared to come down in standard. I'm prepared to accept, if they said you're vegetarian, you're meat, you're either veggie or you're meat or a vegan, and no choices. But if someone said to me it's $2,000, I would have altered my plans in Australia to wait until the quarantine was over. I chose to come now because I got a job offer. So I thought, but I wouldn't have been in I would have been in the financial position to pay $2,000, but I personally would have waited, and I would have turned the job down and waited till I didn't particularly want to come into isolation, and I wouldn't want to spend $2,000 or $2,500 or $4,000. I'd be happy if they said, like, $500 is a cash donation. I'd like, okay, bang, no problem. But if it was $2,000, I would have changed my plans because I would rather have my $2,000 in the bank.
And that's Toni Foster, who's in isolation in Auckland.